Hello, everyone. Sorry for being late. Yesterday we were after the show. We were all talking in my computer. I thought my battery died because I didn't plug my laptop in, and it turned out my laptop died altogether. I couldn't get it restarted after that, even after I plugged it in. So I'm using my other laptop, like an old laptop now. So hopefully everything's going to be fine. But it is.
Should I break out the funeral dirge and taps?
Not yet. I'm hoping still that something. Maybe it was so dead that it needs to charge for longer or something like that. That's happened to me once before, so I'm letting it charge in the corner over there for a while. See what happens. And there we go. So we'll see what. So we'll get right to it. So our family's doing something that's kind of fun. I thought those other people might want to try this. This is kind of cool. So recently, my daughter, who has never my son's always been big into comics, and has always, we've talked about on here the different comic book things, and my daughter recently got into it because she got into The Flash, the television show, The Flash, and now she's in it. And she's very upset, by the way. And it is kind of ridiculous that The Flash in the TV show is not going to be The Flash in the movie. It's kind of
it's weird.
I read an article about it, and I guess the Justice League thing was set up basically 4 years ago when this Flash was just getting going, and
there's another reason, but I can't tell you because you're not far enough into Flash yet.
Okay, well there you go. So anyway, so that's so far where it's at. But she's gotten really into it now, which is great because it's something that my kids like together, which is always a fun thing, which doesn't happen all the time because she's a 14-year-old girl and he's a 12-year-old. She's 15 and she's 12. He's 12. So they're at the age now where she's a high school teenager and doesn't want anything to do with her brother for the most part. But they all like this, and he's got this encyclopedic. She's great to him, but she just doesn't really want to do anything with him. But she's not as nice to him. So, but now he's got this encyclopedia knowledge. So we've decided to go back and watch the entire Marvel movie universe as one at a time from the beginning. So last night we started with Captain America, which was not the first movie, but my son put them in order of actually how they occur in the real thing. So Iron Man was the first actual movie that was put out. But if you were going chronologically, Captain America happens before Iron Man. My son said he's the whole thing figured out. Okay. So there's 15 movies or whatever it is now. It's kind of crazy with all the Hulk movies and the Thor movies so it's kind of fun. So we started last night with Captain America. Now we're moving on to Iron Man 1 tonight and stuff like that. And it's just kind of it's an interesting thing. And it really is fascinating that all these characters, this whole thing to me is just incredible that it exists at all, and that it has taken off to the point.
It is because they went the other way when we were growing up. They made a few and then they said, you know what, these movies stink, we're never doing them again.
Yeah, it became Iron cool. I mean, I get, obviously computers and the CGI and everything that can happen now has made it so much better. I mean, when you watch I was a big fan of the old Spider-Man television show back in the the 70s or whatever it was, which was a great show. But that was, when you watch that now, or even the Adam West Batman, you watch that now and you're just like, holy cow,
Well, I think as it went along, it got less and less campy. Because if you notice, I mean, the first Batman with Michael Keaton was dark, but it was also campy.
That's a good one.
That's with Jack Nicholson as the Joker. But as they got along, as they went along, I actually think the second one was pretty decent. I actually think Val Kilmer as Batman was okay, but the George Clooney one was a disaster. And I thought the first Superman was great with Christopher Reeve, and then as it further and further, it got worse and worse. And that's just the nature of sequels. But with these movies, like the Winter Soldier was great.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie. I mean, that's
the best one. I mean, it's really amazing.
It's as good as any Avenger movie, and it practically is an Avenger movie. It could have been an Avenger movie.
And I haven't seen Civil War yet.
Really good.
That's good, yeah.
Civil War is what you should watch tonight, Mike. I'm telling you, it's on Netflix. It's it's long. It's long, but it goes by fast. It's the battle at the end of Civil War at the airport is one of the best superhero film battles of all time. It's just unbelievable. That's the introduction to Spider-Man too. That's where Spider-Man makes his first introduction, which is the beginning of the Spider-Man movie.
The best thing about Civil War is it's really hard with these multiple character movies to not have one outshine the other, not have them all sort of meld together, and they really did a good job of that, not having that happen.
No, they did. Go ahead.
And the one that I saw last week that I thought was okay, but not at the level of Iron Man. I saw Doctor Strange,
I like Dr.
And
Strange.
it was okay. It was not bad. It was just, I mean, a little out there.
I haven't seen it yet. I'll watch it at some point.
Okay. Yeah. I'll
and then the Guardians of the Galaxy come into play as well because they're also part of the Marvel Universe. Now, they don't usually interact with the other ones too often, but apparently in the next movie they do. In the next movie.
Oh, you mean the second one that's out now?
No, the one no, not this one, but the next
one after. Okay.
The Avengers Infinity Wars, I guess it's called.
Yes.
It's gonna get to a point where every actor in Hollywood is in the Marvel movie.
Yeah, every actor has a super. We are almost at the point where every actor has like a superhero that they're related to, or that they're associated with, which is really.
Think about it. They're paying. They're guaranteed sequels.
Yeah.
And everybody wants their kids to see them in there. So.
Yeah. I know it's great. They're really not. I mean, they're hard to make, but they're not that hard for the actors to make. A lot of it is just a lot of it's CGI, so you're not even involved in it. There's so much of it that's just the actual acting itself. Robert Downey Jr. is really good in Civil War. I thought actually watching it, I was surprised that it didn't. And this sounds probably really goofy, but I thought he could have
Oscar nomination.
I thought he could have got an Oscar nomination for that. He was that good in Civil War, Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he was
really good.
He does a phenomenal job at playing a character. Like his character's always been like kind of goofy. And the great thing about Civil War is he's trying to be serious, but still obviously has the goofy side, but he's trying to be serious. He's trying to be like the voice of reason through the whole thing, which is really interesting for him to be the one who's the voice of reason. It's really well put together. I mean, they just did a great job.
Now, is X-Men, is it Marvel or DC or?
That's Marvel as well. X-Men and the Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, are connected. As far as I know, like I don't understand it completely, but
yeah, I mean, because I haven't seen any crossover at all in the X-Men.
Fantastic Four is also part of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to admit that because every Fantastic Four movie has been bad.
Yeah.
No, that's true. No, I disagree.
I like the first Fantastic Four movie, actually.
Yeah, the first one and
the Jessica Alba one. You mean the one with the?
Yeah, the first one was good.
Yeah, I like the first one.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I don't know, but Wonder, and then the Wonder Woman movie's out now too. Everybody wants to see that. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. So I have
a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. Anyway, let's get going here. I apologize for the late start. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, July 25th, 2017.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund here, watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we've got some more signings today. A lot of signings in the last couple days here, but some significant ones here. First of all, Robin Lehner has been signed to a one-year deal, a $4 million deal.
Yeah, let's talk about that one because Russ and I were talking about that this morning, and I think, I mean, the realization here is that Robin Lehner is a Tim Murray acquisition. They traded a first-round pick for him.
Yep.
He was given the #1 job. He had a decent year last year statistically. The team didn't win because Eichel was out the first 15 to 20 games. But the problem is that in his tenure in Buffalo, he has not been able to carry the team forth to be a more contending team or stay healthy enough to be the #1 goaltender and establish himself. And if you look at this contract, it's a one-year deal, $4 million. $4 million is what Steve Mason got in Winnipeg as a 1A to Connor Hellebuck's 1B. And I think that what Lehner here is he's the 1A to Chad Johnson's 1B. Chad Johnson had a really good year with Calgary last year as a backup. And I don't think Jason Botterill is sold on Robin Lehner, and that's why they gave him a one-year deal. If they were completely sold on him, I think this would have been a much longer deal.
Yeah, I think this is almost a vote of no confidence. This is like when you basically like if you let's pretend you own like a trucking company, and you had a guy that worked for you, and you said, I don't know about this guy, but right now he's the only guy here. We have to pay him X amount or he'll go somewhere else. So we're going to pay him because we just don't know when we can get another person in here. So right now we're going to just pay this guy. That's the feeling I get.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, I think that you're both right. I do think that they have to justify the Tim Murray trade still. They're trying to do that. But I also think that, I mean, like I've talked about before, Robin Lehner is a goalie that I just don't really personally like. I mean, I'm not going to say he's terrible, but he's just not on my. Like when I watch him play, he's huge. He's a giant goalie. Depends on his size for everything.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the prototype of what every team is looking for in a goaltender. Big, rangy. His reflexes are pretty good. I mean, I've watched him a lot. That I think he's not just a shot stopper. He's a goaltender. But the problem is that you need that guy, and this is like one of the concerns that happened with Freddie Anderson in Toronto before last year. Can he play 60 games? Can he be that number one goaltender who can carry you through the playoffs? And that's the problem. He has not proved that he can stay healthy and he can be consistent enough to be that number one goaltender. And that's why Russ is right. This is a sort of a vote of we're a little unsure of what's going on here, and we want to prove to us that you can be that number one goaltender. And if you can, then we'll show you the money. Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. And Buffalo really is in the spot where they need a number one goalie. I mean, this whole plan falls apart if they don't have a number one goalie. And I guess that this is the guy who, I mean, he was a highly touted prospect, right, Russ, when he came in?
Yes.
He was.
He still could be. I mean, it's not like we're giving up on him. And this is why Buffalo signed him, because they're really not giving up on him, but they're really unsure. Like look, Robin Lehner's a hard guy to figure. We could all have conversations about him, and we could all come up with different opinions. He has an unusual style that comes from his father as much as anything, because his father's a goalie coach. So it's almost like Hasek, where he is unusual. You could talk about him, Eck, where you say, hey, he looked mentally out of it on that goal, and then you look up and he still wins the game 3-2. Mike told me offline today, hey, he had really good numbers, but you don't get the feeling he had a really good year. He's just a weird goalie to figure out.
I agree. That's to me. I don't quite get him as the guy moving forward. But I think with a 1-year deal, that's okay. Like I think this is a good compromise for that. You can, because Buffalo is not a Stanley Cup contender yet.
No.
So, you're going to see what you have here. I mean, Buffalo is a playoff contender. That's where they are. So they have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs this year. If
everything goes right,
if everybody stays healthy, basically. I mean, they were close enough last year, despite the fact that they, missed Jack Eichel for such a long period of time. That, if they have a full year of Jack Eichel healthy, they could be actually, in there. And that division is also such that they could be they could sneak in as one of the top 3 teams. You never know what happens there. So there's all different sorts of things going on. But this is the guy, looking a year from now, who are, I don't know who the UFA goalies are a year from now, because they could turn around and say, I'm going to check that while we're talking, but that
still may not be a UFA, right? He's
an RFA after next year.
Right, but I'm trying to see. Let me see who the UFA goalies are next year.
Well, while you're looking that up, I mean, my point of view on him, and this is, I've heard this around Buffalo just from fans. He's like, okay, this guy was purportedly the goaltender of the future in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And Buffalo paid a significant price, but when you had a goaltender in his, at that point, early 30s, now mid-30s, in Craig Anderson, and you had a guy who was a flash in the pan in Andrew Hammond, it was unusual that a team like Ottawa would trade their future number one for a draft pick. And it was a first-round pick. And it ended up being Colin White. But still, the point was, okay, something must be wrong if they've soured on him so much that they moved him, even though they got a good price. And they really didn't have a replacement, and they still really don't, unless you think Mike Condon is a number one goalie of the future there. So
number 2, obviously. So I think
right. I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, okay, if Ottawa moved on, what is wrong here? And what we've seen over his tenure in Buffalo is what's wrong is that half the time he's not around. He's had injury problems. I mean, he got injured in the opening game of the season a couple years ago. So that's he's got to be healthy and he's got to be consistent for him to justify signing him to a long-term extension.
Right. So a year from now, Halak, you're not going to go after Halak.
Yeah, no.
Kerry Lettinen, probably
No.
not.
No.
Craig Anderson, no, he's not going to be there. Cam Ward, no. Jonathan Bernier, no. Chad Johnson, no. Andrew Hammond, Eddie Lack, Pavlik is there. Carter Hutton, Andy Ranta. Ranta maybe would be one of your best bets there. He could have a good year in Phoenix, Ranta, and could have a good year in Phoenix. And but he's not it's not a stellar.
This is where the Cal Peterson defection hurts them, Russ.
It's not a stellar group of UFAs.
This
right
is
there,
where Peterson hurts them. But this is also the weirdness of Antti Ranta because, like, Arizona's just renting him too, maybe, and that's and that is weird too.
Go a year after this though. Check this out. Sorry, Russ, to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
The 2019 UFA goalies. Okay, this is a list. Pekka Rinne. Okay, Rennie's probably going to be old, and Sergei Bobrovsky's a UFA.
Yeah.
Marc-Andre Fleury's a UFA. Semyon Varlamov's a UFA. Cam Talbot's a UFA. Neuwirth, Ryan Miller. Obviously you go through this. I mean, Ryan Miller's going to be older than crazy. That's crazy. But I'm just saying, Jimmy Howard, Steve Mason, Mike Smith. You have like a 2009, 2 summers from now, you have a ton of UFA goalies that have all proven themselves, and they're still going to have time left to play. I mean, you're looking at guys who are really some serious players.
And obviously, you have the connection. And we remember before the expansion draft, there were a few rumors about Fleury in Buffalo.
Yeah,
the connection to Botterill. I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. I mean, this is not assuming that there's going to be somebody in the Buffalo system that develops. I know that they signed one of their draft picks, Johansson, with the Swedish goaltender. I mean, I don't know a lot about him and whether he projects to be a future number one. I mean, he's going to play mostly in the American Hockey League this year, but that's the thing. It's like, I mean, there may not be, after Peterson departed, there may not be a future number one in the pipeline. And if that's the case, then either Botterill's going to have to, and one of the guys that when Russ and I mentioned when we were off the air was, and this is assuming, again, connection to Pittsburgh, that, Tristan Jarry is their goaltender in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. He's potentially a future number one goalie. I mean, he's got that potential, and that might be a year or two down the road. With Matt Murray there playing 60 games, you don't need another goaltender like that sitting behind him. That's the whole, you have Vasilevsky, you have Bishop. You don't need both of them, so you get rid of one of them, and maybe Jerry would be a guy that Pittsburgh would move.
Right. What do you think? What are their prospects like, Russ? You can check it out for me. But as far as goalies go, Mike, we
looked at them a few weeks ago. They're not great. I mean, the kid they drafted this year, I don't know a lot about. I got to go back and look and see.
Lukonen, the Finn. I mean, he's good. Yeah, he's
not Yuki Pekka. No, not him. He's pretty good. Him, I know a lot about. I meant the year before. I think the year before they drafted somebody too. Yuki Pekka is a good goalie. The problem with him is I've seen him win big games, and I've seen him lose games that he shouldn't lose either. So I think he's got mental work through the pipes. He's a big kid. He's got a lot of talent.
Right.
I mainly liked what I've seen out of him in international competition, but there have been times where I've said, I kind of wonder if he could get mentally sharper. And so that's what I wonder about him, and that's why I think the Sabres were able to get him. Where'd they get him, Mike? Like 36th or something?
Yes, early second round. And the guy we're forgetting right now is Linus Ullmark. And Ullmark, I mean, they gave up a low round pick to get Vegas to take somebody else so they could keep Ullmark.
Right.
But there's no guarantee that Ullmark is a number one goaltender. They want to see him develop, and I think after they lose Peterson, they say, okay, we got to keep the other guys because we need options down the road a year or two, and maybe Ullmark will be an option, but maybe not.
It does feel like a perfect fit, I have to say, again, for Marc-Andre Fleury 2 years from now. If if this, or even next year, like you could see them trading for him next year. And if this doesn't work out, they work out a trade with Vegas if he has a good year.
Yeah.
If Fleury has a half decent year there, or next year at the trade deadline they pick up Marc-Andre Fleury, because he's
or Tristan Jarry. I mean, maybe
UFA, yeah.
Maybe they go with Tristan Jarry. That's possible too.
Yeah, I mean, so there's options there, but I think that I don't think this is a terrible deal, but let's go into the next. What's probably the biggest news of the day, which I'm going to be writing about this afternoon. My opinions on. I want to get your opinions first, Russ. Is the extension of Zibanejad, right? So
I thought the biggest news of the day was the review that I just put up for Goon Last of the Enforcers. Okay, sorry.
We'll get back to that. But the Rangers extended Mike Zibanejad 5 years, 5.35.
So this is an interesting one because with Mika Zibanejad, he was asking for 5.35, and that's exactly what he got.
Really?
So it's so rare that a guy gets exactly the asking price. But the key to this was clearly for the Rangers to get some term because they like what they've seen. He scored some clutch overtime goals last year, on the road especially, and that was a big deal. 5 years is about right for him.
Okay.
But again, remember yesterday I sort of eased into this, and Jan and I weren't exactly in agreement, but they are paying him as sort of like a 1A center. So he's not a 1, he's not a 2, he's that guy in between. They're going to use him as a 1, and even though he's got less than 300 games in the NHL, they're still paying him very close to a 1C, a young 1C salary. And this is where I think teams now have to sort of think about. I think the Rangers may have goofed a little bit moving out Stepan before this negotiation if they don't like the salary. Like some people say, hey, it's a little high. I think it's a good deal because of the term, but I also think if Stepan were still on the team, they would have signed him for less.
Interesting.
Probably under 5. Probably
under 5. But once they moved Stepan, it was obvious
who
was going to get that job. So that affected the salary if you think about it.
Right, but they had to move Stepan when they did because they got a 7th overall pick in the deal, and that was probably, But and then this is the thing.
And look, and they got Lias Anderson. They're probably going to use him this year. I'm just saying that all started like a chain of events.
This contract shows why the deal between the Senators and the Rangers took place, because Ottawa, as we know, are, quote, fiscally responsible, unquote, and they had Brassard locked in on a contract on a front-loaded deal, and I think the last year it's significantly less. I think he had 2 years left on that deal, and the first year and the second year were significantly less than the years before when he was with the Rangers.
Right.
With Zibanejad was an RFA after this year, put up good numbers, but there was no way that Ottawa was going to sign Zibanejad to a long-term deal like this when they had Kyle Turris coming up as a UFA after next year. So in the mind of Pierre Dorian, it was probably, do we sign Zibanejad or do we sign Turris? And that's why they made this deal.
And we talked about that. We talked about that when it happened. Like, hey, this is sort of a way for Ottawa to trade away a guy they weren't going to re-sign, and a guy that the Rangers clearly had designs on re-signing if he were to perform for them. And Zibanejad definitely performed. Some people will still worry about the injuries. I don't really worry about that with him. I don't think it's a big deal. So I like what I've seen, and at the end of the day, it's a good signing because, again, they don't have a lot of options anyhow. I mean, let's be real.
I mean, in my mind, Zibanejad is a very good number 2.
Yeah.
An okay number 1. They really don't, as Russ said, they don't have a lot of options. What this does do, and this will continue until he signs a contract on Long Island in Brooklyn or somewhere else, I think it still leaves open the possibility of the Rangers being in on Tavares simply because now your number 1 center is making 5.3.
Yeah,
and you've got the cap room, and then now you're going to have other guys fall in behind him like Kevin Hayes or JT Miller. You're not spending a boatload on a number 1 center. They do have cap room after getting rid of Stepan's $6.5 million contract. Nash's $7.8 million drops off at the end of the year. They're perfectly positioned to open up the pocketbook on John Tavares, and John Tavares won't have to move anywhere because he'll be driving into Manhattan instead of driving into Brooklyn.
Still enjoy Long Island. He then will only have to go to Westchester to practice, which isn't going to be that bad. So he's not driving into Brooklyn. Which
is there any chance though, Russ? I mean, he could pull the Peter Forsberg and say, "No, I'm not going to sign with the enemy. I cannot sign a deal with the enemy." Like,
I think there's always that chance, but I don't think. I think as the days go on here, the chance of that goes down, because I think it's really worrisome for the Islander fan that we hear nothing. We don't even hear that they're talking. They could certainly be talking, if nothing else, but it sounds like they don't have anything to talk about yet.
Yeah, and you see, the burden for the Islanders right now is about 10 times more difficult than the burden was on Steve Yzerman at this time last year, because I think Stamkos wanted to stay in Tampa, but he wanted the opportunity to explore the open market and see what was out there. Tavares, right now, Garth Snow and the ownership of the Islanders are giving every reason for him to test the market, because they have not done anything. All they did was move around things. They got rid of Hamonic. They made their defense. Now, I think they have some young defensemen, and they could step in. But I think overall they made the defense worse. They maybe improved a little bit in terms of upgrading from Eberle from Ryan Strome. But then they cleared cap space by trading a first-round pick to get rid of Grabowski's deal, and they haven't done anything with the cap room. So, okay, where's the great improvement? And if you don't improve, he's not staying. There's no way.
There's some improvement.
But not great. Not great
enough. At this point, though, I think he probably would even get past the teammate thing. I think it's the location of where he'd be playing is the number one deal breaker right now, because even after, the thing they had at the Coliseum, the little rally, we still don't hear anything. And unfortunately in New York, these politics seem to drag on. And if it drags on long enough, the Islanders may not get an answer on where they're going to play until the middle of the winter, if they're even lucky. And at that point, Tavares is going to ride it out into free agency, the same as Stamkos did, with probably the same sort of deal, in that he'll come last to the Islanders and tell them what he's able to get and see if they could match it or exceed it.
Now, and like I said, we'll be talking about this a lot over the next 7 or 8 months, but it's not going to be just the Rangers. It's going to be the Rangers. It's going to be the Canadians. It's going to be the Leafs. There's going to be 7, 8, 9 teams that could be in on a Tavares. Detroit will be in on him because they don't know any better. Buffalo. I mean, there's going to be a lot of teams that'll be in on Tavares. Right. And it's a question of whether he wants to leave the New York area, which, I mean, who knows? But, I mean, the Rangers, he could stay in that area and get his money. And that might be too much of an enticement.
Yeah. Other signings, Mark Streit is signed with Montreal. We talked yesterday about the domino effect of Oduya, who, by the way, the reports are that he turned down more money from a team to go to Ottawa.
Because of his friendship with Karlsson. There's that Swedish connection there.
And he said for a chance to win.
That's always nice.
Which is a blatant lie. I mean, I'm sorry.
The thing. Pierre Dorian was careful in his wording, saying he might be able to be a partner to Karlsson. We're going to leave it up to the coaching staff.
Yeah.
But Erik Karlsson carries a lot of weight. And when he went out to this lunch or brunch or coffee with Oduya, he kind of put his arm around him and said, "Hey, partner,
you're my guy." Yeah, I mean, and Karlsson holds a ton of weight in Ottawa. I mean, we're talking Crosby weight, in Pittsburgh. We're talking, we're talking Taves weight in Chicago. I mean, this is Karlsson is maybe even more so than either of those two players, because, I mean, Kane has weight in Chicago and Malkin has weight in Pittsburgh. Karlsson is basically running the show. I mean, and also there's not a better team guy or in the league than Karlsson. So you're looking at a guy who you're okay giving him weight, because he's a guy who absolutely 100% is not going to take advantage of it, and is such a solid individual.
Well, let's just say this: you do not want to start pissing off Erik Karlsson.
Pretty hard to do. I can't imagine.
No. But let me finish.
Yeah.
2 years away for him being a UFA.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're bringing in, he went out and he talked up Oduya. He's coming in for a pretty economical deal. The bonuses that he's going to get that can move the contract up, I think up to 2.5 or 2.25 million, are all games played, time on ice bonuses, which means if he does play with Karlsson, he's going to hit those bonuses. If he doesn't play with Karlsson, he's not going to hit those bonuses. So if he goes out on a limb and says, "Okay, Johnny, you come to town, we're going to give you all these performance bonuses," he probably isn't going to get $2.5 million from any other team I mean, this is and they're not going to piss off Erik Karlsson. So Johnny Oduya will be on the top pairing with Erik Karlsson.
Start there, he'll start there. See how it goes. I mean,
yeah, and if he's a liability, then they're covered.
And Karlsson's not the kind of guy who's going to force that issue. He's not going to say you better be, but he does hold weight there, and he should hold weight there. And the bottom line is he's absolutely unbelievably deserving of that. And there's not many players I feel that way about. Like there's some players I really don't think, because I've also heard Karlsson is just not the kind of guy who throws that weight around. But I do believe that Oduya, I think Oduya coming had to do with Karlsson convincing him to come. I definitely think that's the case.
Well, just think of this. This time next year, next July 1st, they can sign him to the extension. Right. If they do not offer him the same amount as Taves, Kane, and Carey Price,
he'll be the highest paid defenseman in NHL history.
Yes.
There's no choice about it.
Because Subban is making $9 million.
He will make $11 million, I think.
So you're thinking he's the second highest behind McDavid.
Yep.
Yes, I think he'll be the second highest paid player, right behind McDavid. He'll be the highest paid defenseman, no questions asked.
And if he doesn't get it from Ottawa, he'll get it from someplace else. But I think
he will get it from Ottawa because Ottawa needs him that much badly, and because he honestly does want to stay in Ottawa. There's a relationship there that's very solid. But you're not talking about a player who wants to go anywhere else either. And they're not going to take advantage of that in Ottawa. So I think let's get into Streit for a second, because that's really what we started talking about. So we got off before we tangent away there. So Mark Streit has signed a 1-year deal, $700,000 to return to Montreal, a place where he had a lot of success playing on the power play. It was a big part of the Canadiens' power play. Definitely loved it in Montreal. The pressure of Montreal, he's a player who was able to handle that. Strait's a very laid-back guy, so he had no problem with that. His time in Montreal was basically, if you remember, was with Markov on point on the power play, and those two ran a great power play. Now, some are saying that this may have an effect on Markov's signing. As written in the blog there. I'm on the fence about it. I'm not sure, but I think that it obviously doesn't help that they've filled. If anything, this might force Markov's hand to come in and do something reasonable.
Well,
so I'm not convinced that this means Markov's gone. I am convinced that this is a factor in it. I don't know if it's a factor for good or for evil.
Well, I look at the Canadiens. Right now their structure on defense. They have 8 one-way contracts.
Right.
They have 5 left-hand shots, 3 right-hand shots, and Streit is one of them. Obviously teams mostly go with 6 defensemen. Streit would be a bottom pairing guy. They have Weber and Petrie as other right-hand shots. Alzner, Schlemko, and either Jordy Ben or Brandon Davidson. And they're spending close to $24 million in cap room on defense. There's no room for Andrei Markov. None. I really don't think that there is any. I think this shuts the door. I don't see them bringing in Streit as a 7th or 8th defenseman.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean,
$700,000 for Mark Streit is 7th or 8th defenseman money.
It is,
and also what Mark Streit brings to the table. If you've watched Mark Streit over the last year, he is a 7th or 8th defenseman. That's what he is. You cannot put more on him than that in Montreal.
Well, he can't.
I mean, they can, but you're not. That's not a good recipe.
He can't be a power play specialist if he's not in the lineup, and a 7th or 8th defenseman is not in the lineup.
Yeah, that's true. He is, unless you dress 7 defenseman. But I think that for the most part, yeah, you're not gonna do that, and you're gonna. Well, Montreal might. You never know. But at 5 or 6, even that he's not a top 4 defenseman at $700,000, or even at his ability right now. Then there's no way he can be a top 4 defenseman for you. You still need to get another top 4 defenseman.
Okay, I mean, I get
playoff team. The Canadiens are a team that considers themselves a contender. You can't possibly be a contender.
Well, honestly, they may consider themselves, but right now, as they're currently constituted, they are not, because they do not have a number 1 or arguably a number 2 center. Right now, Philip Deneau and Thomas Plekanec are their top 2 centers, unless they play Galchenyuk or unless they play Drouin out of position. So that's the whole fantasy.
Totally disagree with that. But
here's what I would tell you. Here's what I would tell you, and why I disagree with you. I had a long conversation with Streit at the Stanley Cup, pre-Stanley Cup, and he really was happy to be in the role he was in, but I could tell by the way the conversation was that he still thinks he could be in a bigger role in this league. And I think he was happy to end up in Pittsburgh, but I think in order to sign this deal, I bet you there were some assurances that he's going to get X amount of playing time and be able to play on the power play. I don't think he signed this deal to sit. I really don't.
I agree with that, but I think those assurances are really hard to make, and I think those assurances are really.
Well, when you're desperate, and they were desperate for a power play guy at that point, because
unless Claude Julien really sees him as that. I mean, it's all going to be up.
Well, he is that. I mean, on the power play, he's still terrific at moving the puck around. Still has a great shot. He is still that.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
I foresee Mark Streit fulfilling the same role that John Michael Lyles, of the guy who is basically a power play specialist, did in Boston. He played on the bottom pairing, right-hand shot. Played probably 14, 15 minutes a night at most. Sometimes he's a liability because John Michael Lyles was never a great defensive defenseman, but he was a good second power play guy, and that's what they wanted. And I think that's what Streit is there. I'm just saying, you're not going to have Mark Bergevin spending 2 years, $12 million on Andrei Markov, and like you said before, Ak, maybe the fact that him being his own agent it has hurt him, but now I think he has to recognize as his own agent that his path in Montreal is closed off. There are other places right now he could go and be a top 4 defenseman, at Washington or Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh doesn't have the room, but I mean there are other places, Toronto, as we've mentioned. I think that those are more viable options, and I think that's the direction that Markov is going to take. Either that or he's going to go back to the KHL and play in the Olympics.
Okay, yeah.
And that is a possibility.
Maybe he goes to the KHL and plays in the Olympics. That's possible. But I don't know. I still think that I've heard that this week, and I wrote about this even, that the rubber hits the road with Markov and the Canadiens. The Canadiens have basically said to him that this week is it, and I wrote about this last weekend. And they said that, that by this Friday, what I was told, they want to know what's going on with Markov. Now, they made this move today, and knowing that they were basically waiting on Markov and giving Markov sort of a deadline of this Friday. Right. This move is definitely a chess move in that game, because they've said, okay.
I don't know how this move helps.
It helps because Markov, you're going to find out what Markov really wants now. Like the issue is before, it was hard to tell whether Markov really believed he was going to get 2 years from somebody else, or if he really wanted to go to the KHL or what have you. Now that you've made this move, Markov knows the window is this small.
Yeah, but I think all you did was push Markov to
Markov and Streit. Markov and
Markov to another team. That's what you did.
Maybe Markov and Streit are tight as well. And I mean that maybe they think that this is a way of getting Markov to come into. Maybe they think that. I mean, I don't know.
If you're Mark Streit, you do not want to see Markov in camp. I don't care how tight they are, because if he's there, he's not playing. The other guy's not playing.
Right, and think of it this way: signing Markov, you're now adding another 35+ contract.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to eat $700,000 if it doesn't work. It's not so easy to eat $6 million. And I don't think that Markov is going to come too far off of that high figure. He's going to expect to get paid. Now, maybe it won't be 6, maybe it'll be 4.5 to 5, but that's significant money.
I mean, just because they're friends, Zach, that's like saying if you create.
I'm just saying that.
No, but hear me out. If you're going to create a new show and you say to Mike, you or Russ could be the host. You guys figure it out. We'll fight each other to the death. I mean, that's really the way it will come out.
I know that. Believe me, I know the backstabbing that goes on between the two of you right now off the air is insane.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not going to sit there and you guys out there have no idea the kind of how I have to keep Mike and Russ from killing each other round the clock.
Kaya is my spy.
Yeah, there you go. So
sleeping on the job.
Commissioner Bill Daley said something today that should come as an interesting comment for all of us, especially after what we talked about a little bit yesterday. I'm happy to go on the record. This is according to the Hockey News, and this article was written by our buddy Ken Campbell.
Okay.
I'm happy to be on the record. NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley said in an email to THN.com, the Hockey News. There is not an alternative schedule. Having NHL players participate in the 2018 Winter Olympics is not an option. All the international federations are planning appropriately for constructing teams that will not include NHL players. I anticipate there will be a federation announcement in the coming days that should eliminate any and all continuing doubt or skepticism about this issue.
And to go along with that, the Hockey Canada is announcing today the Sean Burke as the general manager and Willie Desjardins, the former Vancouver coach, as the head coach for Team Canada. So bye-bye alternative schedule. Bye-bye 2018 Olympics. See you later. Arrivederci.
I think it's important to note that still doesn't mean an alternative schedule didn't exist.
Yes.
It just may have existed up until the time he gave the quote.
Right.
Well, Russian players were telling people last week.
Heck, do you have a response for that?
All I'm saying is Russian players were telling people last week they thought it existed, right? So Russian players were spreading the rumor that it existed. That they were the ones who were doing it.
But they could have killed it. But they could have killed it a week ago. They didn't.
Far be it from Russians to spread disinformation about certain things going on in the world.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it definitely existed, but I'm just saying if they wanted to kill it, they could have killed it that day in a quote, and they didn't. That's the truth.
You're right. Now,
but they killed it now, and that's fine.
Players on AHL contracts will be allowed to head to the Olympics. And
AHL only.
AHL only, and the list is really grim. It's not good.
There is Jerry Clinton, also for the Hockey News, listed 8 players he felt that were possibly in this boat. That he thought, okay, so let me go through these players. Chris Connor, who plays for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Mm-hmm. So that's for Team USA. He's 33 years old. Right. He's bounced around a lot in his career, obviously. Darren Archibald, who plays for the Utica Comets with Team Canada. He is a Canucks. He's isn't he? Is Utica the Canucks? I think, right?
No, yeah, Utica's Canucks. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris Bork, who plays with the Bears, could possibly be on Team USA. Chris Bork has been all over the place, and is definitely a good. I mean, when you watch the Bears play, it's obvious he's a great AHL player. That's what Chris Bork is. Patrice Cormier, who plays with the Manitoba Moose, another. Now Manitoba is.
He's had an interesting career, and
especially on the ice. If you get my
drift. Part of the Ilya Kovalchuk trade, if you remember, that's how I remember Cormier. He plays in Canada. Steve Moses, right? Who plays for the Rochester Americans. Steve Moses is another one of those guys who has had a really interesting international career, just a great international career, but has not really worked out too well in the U.S.
All I can say is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Spengler Cup.
I mean, it's worse than that.
Colin Smith, who plays for the Scranton Penguins.
Former Marley.
Travis Moran, who plays for the Texas Stars.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Kostopoulos.
Former Montreal Canadian.
Scranton Penguins, yep. And those are the lists. Those are the ones he lists as possible guys. Now, this
all I could say is, holy Moses, if that's the team for like the U.S. or Canada, you might as well just hand over the win to Russia now, because they're not going to be able to compete if those are the guys.
Here's what's interesting. In the past, if you remember, before the NHLers went to the Olympics, Team Canada and Team USA would be putting together their teams now and in the fall, and they would play together, and they would travel around with each other for a couple months.
Yes.
To try to kind of like get team chemistry going, and they would have a centralized team that would be Team Canada or Team USA. That's not happening this time around, apparently. Canada and USA will not have a centralized. They will not have a centralized team. Instead, both federations are looking at more of a world championship type model, which means they will put teams together not long before the games and take their chances with a team that is thrown together without a ton of preparation.
What I'm wondering here, Russ, is clearly anybody with an NHL contract, a 2-way or a 1-way contract, is not going to be allowed. That does not forego players who have been drafted but have not been signed, or NCAA players, Canada or US or any nationality, who have not, obviously they haven't signed contracts. So, you're talking, players from the last two, maybe 3 drafts who could, if they want to leave Boston University or Boston College or whatever. And what I'm wondering here is, whether players that we're going to see at the World Junior in Buffalo in December and January, those teams, half of those players or a lot of those players are not signed by their
I don't
NHL.
know why they wouldn't take those teams and take them to the Olympics, because they already have them together basically. I mean, I know those players are missing a lot of time already for their World Junior team, for their junior team.
Some of them are signed on contracts and are just playing.
True. I mean, there's some NHLers that can go there. But according to this article, and this is what Ken Campbell believes will happen. He says the players he believes will be comprised largely of players who are toiling in European leagues and those who are on AHL contracts, with the possibility of some junior and college players thrown into the mix.
Well, not some. If I'm Team USA, I'm going heavy. And I got to tell you something. I'm going to USHL too, because there are some guys in the USHL that will be top draft picks this year that I'd rather have on my team than 33, 34-year-old guys that I already know what their limit is talent-wise.
I mean, I'm not scouring the Deutsch League or the SM Liga in Finland or the SHL or the KHL, but honestly, I'm trying to think of who the American goaltenders would be, and I can't come up with anybody better right now than Ottinger and Joseph Wall. I mean, could it be the fact that they? And remember this: when does the NCAA playoffs start? They start in March, so
yeah,
mid.
How this plays out from here is fascinating, according to this. Okay, and I really think that he wrote a great article. He checks out on Hockey News. Ken Campbell really did a good job on this one. So here we go. So now all appears remaining to do is what to do with the rogue NHL players. Well, first of all, he says like guys like Jonathan Blum and Jordan Greenway could be on the USA roster.
Sure, and Blum is actually a pretty good talent, and Greenway is a really good talent.
Right.
But I'm going to give you the name. Hold on. Before you read this, and I didn't read this article, I will give you the name of the American goalie because Mike asked. It's going to be Tim Thomas. Thank you.
Tim Thomas.
That would be great.
That would be phenomenal.
That would be phenomenal.
Like I had said before, actually, that I thought that they should make this an alumni Olympics. I think that would be hilarious.
I mean, seriously though, if you call Tim Thomas, by the time the Olympics come around, he will be the best goalie option if you think about it.
Oh man, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write an article. You inspired me. I'm gonna put together alumni teams for each of these because I think that would be. Recently retired alumni teams that could seriously.
Marty Brodeur for Team Canada.
That would be the most interesting thing these guys could do, because that would and for NBC and it's brilliant. I mean,
I don't think Brodeur would do it, but I think Tim Thomas might. That's the funny thing.
Brodeur's kept himself in shape. I mean, you're only talking about a short tournament,
but Brodeur's standards are ridiculously high and rightly so, because. Of the kind of records he has, it's going to be harder to lower Brodeur. I think it would be easier to lower Tim Thomas. I do.
We got to do this. So I have a really big story I'm working over tomorrow involving Tavares that I've been chasing down. And we talked about Tavares earlier in the show. And I think my story tomorrow will shock everyone as to what I found out and about the team that Tavares is really people who are close to him say that they think he could end up on. But is really surprising. So that'll be tomorrow's blog. But I'm definitely going to do this. I'm going to put together an alumni team. So I think that would be. Why would you not do that in comparison to doing this? Like doing this is This is a Spengler Cup. You're right, and it's just like there's going to be so little interest in this.
Yeah.
No, I mean
the people. It's whenever the Olympics are the Olympics, right? But and for some guys who get to do this. What an awesome thing! Like for a Jonathan Blum or whatever, like who's toiled around in different things in different situations like that.
I think that
you gotta feel good for him.
This is the closest thing that we're gonna get to this Olympics. Was it 92? Was it Albertville when we had Lindros? When we had like Dave Hannon, like
That's
Peter
right.
Peter Nedved was like he was playing for Canada. It was a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're going to end up happening. I think you're going to have some, like Ken Campbell said, we're going to have some NCAA guys. If Tim Thomas isn't available, we can get Mr. Zero Brimzik. We could go back and resurrect him. But I'm just saying, I think that would be Mike Richter possibly. But
Tim Thomas is a logical choice. Like, there's no reason he can't do it. I don't think he's too old.
Tim Thomas was barely in shape when he was playing in the NHL.
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you, you put it. You tell Tim Thomas.
Tim Thomas is in shape now, great, but I can't. I mean, honestly,
he's got time. He doesn't have to be in shape tomorrow.
I don't know.
He's been working at Chick-fil-A the last couple of years.
Who knows, right? I mean, I love Tim Thomas. He's a great guy and everything like that. But I haven't talked to him for a while. I will call him up and I will find out if he's willing to go, Russ. We will.
This is where I missed the sound effects because that was worthy of a rim shot.
Tell him I stand behind him.
All right, I will.
And if you did, you'd be about 2 feet taller than him.
He's 40, well, let's see. He's 5'11", Mike. He's taller than me.
Taller than Russ.
Great.
So now all of the
not out of the realm.
Here's how Campbell thinks this will play out from here, and this is probably almost exactly correct because I've heard the same thing from other people. But he's really said it better than anybody I've heard so far. So here's how it's likely going to play out. Sometime in the near future, the league is going to introduce an edict that no player on either a 1- or 2-way NHL contract will be allowed to play in the Olympics, citing the standard player's contract as its justification. It's important the league does this because then it will take team owners off the hook for preventing players from going to the Olympics. The owner will then be able to say to the player, look, I'd love to send you, but the league forbids it. This is what has to happen for guys like the Capitals, where the Capitals, owner has a great relationship with, Ovechkin and doesn't want to sit there and tell Ovechkin to do this, but he can be able to say, listen, the league, and the owners love, this is why the league exists for the owners to be able to throw off responsibility to the league and say, I'd love to do it, but I can't, even though they wouldn't love to do it. Shortly after that edict, he goes on to say, the NHLPA will file a grievance claiming that individual player contracts are between the player and the team, and if the owner gives his blessing, the player should be free to play in the Olympics. He'll likely go to an arbitrator who will make a ruling one way or the other.
Players are going to lose that argument. Like if it goes to a judge looks at this as a job. What a judge is basically going to say is, you're under contract for that job. If you leave that job, you're abandoning that job.
Right. But think of the implications of saying that the standard player contract is essentially an agreement between an individual team and the player. That sets up maybe personal service contracts rather than contracts that fit into the CBA, and you give the opening to somebody like a Toronto or a New York signing a player for way above 20% of the cap because you open up the door to something outside of the CBA.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can't do that. Right. You can get outside. You can get out the salary cap. I mean, that's an NHL thing. And if you're saying it's individual player contracts between the player and the team, how is the salary cap legal? Because the salary cap is not.
Well, no, the salary cap is legal because the Players Association and the NHL collectively bargained it. If you collectively bargain something, you can put yourself in any kind of limitation because you have representatives who do it. What I'm saying is, if a judge says that a team has the free will to negotiate separately outside of the CBA, it opens up a whole can of worms.
They're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that.
I know what you're saying. I mean, you're almost saying that like if a team if player contracts are between player and the team, the team could go and play in any league they want to play in.
Right.
They could form their own league and say, okay, we're going to go play in our own league. That's like something you have to. I think the interesting thing
I'm telling you, there will be a punishment.
Yeah.
For players that do this, even if the owner says it's okay, because there's no way the league is going to stand for it and just say, hey, you 10 guys, you're 10 of our biggest stars, go ahead and play in the Olympics. Have a good time.
Yeah, they could still suspend him without pay, like for 20 games or something like crazy like that. I could see that happening.
I will guarantee you I'll almost guarantee you this. If a player decides to leave, and to say Alex Ovechkin says, I'm going to the Olympics, he will be suspended for the remainder of the regular season and the playoffs. They will use that. They will use some kind of really. Yeah,
it'll be still have to be something. Plus, Ovechkin
over the top.
Ovechkin goes to the Olympics and he is over there playing, against the likes of Jonathan Blum and way lesser players than that. I mean, is this really anything Ovechkin should do or want to do? I mean,
the Russians are going to be the overwhelming favorite anyway.
And he wants to make Vladimir Putin happy. I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
Right, you're gonna have Kovalchuk, you're gonna have Voyanov, you're gonna have Datsuk probably. They're gonna be the overwhelming favorite anyway. So Ovechkin doesn't really need it. The only thing Ovechkin is doing this is for his own personal glory because he'll have won a gold medal. Even though I think
it's more than that. I will say that there's a nationalistic pride that's built into these guys that make them want to do it. But again, he signed on to the NHL. And we go back to the other thing that we argued about before. If all of a sudden the Washington Capitals were to announce, hey, Alex Ovechkin won't be here for games, and they give a 2-week period, people who bought tickets for those games are not going to be pleased. It might be their one game that they bought to see Ovechkin, or maybe they want their kid to see him or whatever. And I know it happens. Like, a guy could get hurt, right? But if somebody's missing 2 weeks like that, that's gonna hurt.
No, it's going to really hurt. But I mean, I guess the precedent that the NHL Players Association could go with would be the precedent set by the soccer around the world, right? Where soccer teams around the world who have high-paying players have allowed players to leave in the middle of the season to play in the Olympics or World Cups and things like that. That's commonplace in soccer, correct?
I have no idea.
No, I'm pretty sure it is. And you can help us out in the comments, if you want, or send us an email to ekland@hockeybuzz.com and let me know. But I'm pretty sure that this is commonplace because, these leagues are still going on. And
but how much more money do those teams make than an average NHL team? A lot. The answer is
how much more of an investment do they have? I mean, gosh, the money spent on some of these players that they're allowing to go play in these World Cups and soccer. I mean, you're talking about, $40 million a year players, some of these guys.
Yeah, but in these okay, for example, when Team USA is trying to qualify for the World Cup, when they're playing Trinidad and Tobago, their number one goaltender, their number one striker, their number one defender, they're not playing those guys. It's only when they're playing Mexico, or only when they're playing, do they bring everybody to bear. So they're obligated to Premier League teams or MLS teams, and they may miss a game here or there. I mean, they're not stopping those leagues to play in those games.
Well, here's the other thing. I think the more complicated part is how many games is a soccer player missing? 2?
Yeah.
Maybe 3?
Yeah, it's probably, It's I have to
hockey player is going to miss like 10?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have some friends in soccer. I'll find out more about that. But
if we look at the time frame, you could miss 8 to 10 or more hockey games. It's a lot of games.
And I understand the enjoyment and the national glory that comes with the Olympics, but honestly, the years that the Olympics are on the schedule, and you've got that schedule that is packed with 4 games and 6 nights, I think it brings down the quality of the NHL game. And frankly, I could care less about the Olympics. I care about what's going on in the NHL, 82 games and the 2 months of the playoffs, and I derive more enjoyment out of that than I do the freaking Olympics.
Yeah, but Mike, people actually tuned in, I don't know how many, to watch Michael Phelps race a digital. If they did that, they will probably watch this too.
Oh, man, that's a whole nother discussion. Boy, people are pissed off about that.
I didn't even tune in. I told you, I knew it was scamish.
There had to be a way they could fix that, right? Come on now.
And did he win?
No, he lost.
Okay, then that's
spoiler alert. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway,
he could be sued by whoever ran it.
It's days.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Here's the last thing I'll throw out about this before we get out of here. The Olympics, this happening. Okay, if the Russian players are not allowed to go, I think this puts the World Cup of hockey in jeopardy, because I can see the Russian team, if they don't get Ovechkin and the Malkin and those guys over there for the Olympics, saying we're not gonna put together a team for the World Cup of hockey anymore.
Yeah,
like,
but they already kowtowed to the Russians for Sochi. This is not on their soil.
I still think this isn't out, because the Russians don't. I mean, I don't know how much the Russians want to be in the World Cup of hockey anymore, because honestly, I think that what happens, they've
money on it. They don't really have a choice.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
this is now part of being in the union, in the PA. All of those players make money off of this now. They don't make money off of the other things we're talking about.
I don't know if they had to. I don't think anyone had to participate in the World Cup of hockey.
Well, I don't think you could simply opt out if you want to. Like, I think
you could.
I don't know about that.
I have to find out if they were forced to do it. But I
Let's
think
put it this way. Let's say you're allowed to opt out. If it got to the point where 50 or more players were opting out, the league would step in because, again, the league's making money along with the players for these events.
Well, yeah, that's supposed to be for the players' retirement and all that stuff. That's
Yeah,
a lot of stuff. I mean, I agree, but I could see the Russians, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the Russians don't have to officially be involved in it. Maybe they can just put together a Russian team and play them anyway. Who cares? But I mean, it's just like, to me, because it technically is an NHL All-Star thing. I don't
think you're going to have the Russians fight the NHL on this. I just don't see it.
I could see that. I could, because I think the KHL would love to fight the NHL.
I will say this. Here's a good teaser. So I'm going to go completely off topic just for a minute. So in Goon, Last of the Enforcers, there's a lot of KHL hate in there. And there's actually, it's the Canadians versus like the KHL. I felt like some of the comments they said were really comments that a lot of people feel about the KHL over in Canada about hockey. So what you're saying would make them even more hated in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
as an outlaw league, then.
Okay, so you have to check out Russ's article on Sportsology. You reviewed this movie, and definitely check it out. It's out there. Sportsology.com.
Yep.
And
out September 1st.
Okay, movie's out then. So there you have it. So can't wait to get up and watch Jordan Greenway play at 2 a.m. This February. Sorry.
I'll watch him.
You'll get up at 2 a.m. to watch this, huh?
Listen, I like Jordan Greenway. I think
I'm nothing against Jordan Greenway. I just picked a random name. I'm just saying, to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning for me requires a little. It was hard enough. Like the World Juniors was like, I did it when it was in Russia because that was the World Juniors and that was fun. I don't know if it's going to be worth it.
Tim Thomas is the goalie. I will be up to watch it.
If they put together like recently retired NHLers, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
that would really, and I think, but then again, these guys. I mean, there's going to be a lot of players who get a second chance here. So
would you rather have a recently retired potential Hall of Fame goalie in Tim Thomas if he says he can get in shape, or a starting goalie at the AHL level, or even a college goalie?
Yeah, I'd rather have Tim Thomas.
Yeah,
I think there's no question
that's no slight to the other guys. It's just like he might be your best bet.
Marty Brodeur play again. People are all over that. Danny Briere. There's players out there who recently retired who could be like phenomenal in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you would get a lot.
Got a job. I don't know if they'd let him out of the job. Just saying.
Yeah. No, they're all working in it, but they would all get a chance to be out. That would be fun.
No. That's Brodeur may be working. Danny's like entrenched in that Portland team now. He is a.
Oh, I know.
Well, hey,
like a VP. I don't think he could just stay away.
Just think if Chris Pronger played for Team Canada, he could get suspended internationally now.
Yeah. There you go. Chris Pronger could return. There you go.
No, he can't.
I know. All right, guys. That's all the time we have for today. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this video. We have been getting more and more comments these days, and we're going to have to start, which is good. Some of them are, of course,
not so good.
Are not so good, but that's only to be expected with YouTube comments.
As long as you're watching, I don't care what you say.
Yeah, I mean.
Thanks, Rob.
Like I said many times, it's only hockey, for crying out loud. It's only hockey. If you're taking it that seriously, you should probably evaluate other aspects of your world. Anyway, but if we should start taking some commenters, feel free to comment on any. If you don't like us, tell us you don't like us. That's fine.
Should we do who's more popular? Is that what we're going to do now?
Oh, no, we don't want to do that because I don't want to do that for sure.
We know who would win that contest.
I'm not going to have a shot there. So, hey. So, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But we'll start taking I want to start taking some questions from comments as well. That would be a good thing. And like us. Please do like. And
the question can't be like, Russ, why are you such a jerk? That's not a question.
No, it is. It's not a question for this period of time.
Right.
No.
Maybe in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Talk to you soon.